Much has been said and written about Anwar Ibrahim's odyssey. A 25-year journey of ups, downs and everything in between to become Malaysia's Prime Minister. From firebrand student leader to rapidly rising political star to political prisoner and now Malaysia's leader.
Now there is a new dawn for Malaysia.
Nearly 2 years into the job, he is now caught up in a changed world order, having to navigate his country on a delicate course through waters muddied by the global impact of escalating China-US tensions. We catch up with him in Putrajaya for a wide-ranging conversation in which he gets as candid as he can on camera about everything, from South China Sea tensions.
Why this obsession? Do we have a problem? Yes. Have we encountered any serious clashes or problems? No.
To his support for Hamas in the Israel-Gaza war.
So Mandela was a terrorist until the world took a position that, look, he was a freedom fighter. Why can't you now focus on Israel? The problem is no longer with Hamas now.
This is Talking Post, and here is Anwar Ibrahim.
Well, tough questions.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for joining us. It's an honor and a privilege to have you on this show.
Thank you.
Let's dive right into it. We'll talk about China-Malaysia relations. Now, you know, we're marking half a century since China and Malaysia set up diplomatic relations. We have occasions being marked in mainland China, in Hong Kong as well. Now, you have been quite firm in your relations with China that you will not subscribe to, you will not be consumed by the China-phobia. That seems to have consumed the rest of the world. Now, that's fine, but the thing is, most of this phobia is driven, as you know, by geopolitics between China and the US. And the US is a kind of country where it will not accept neutrality. It's you're with us or you're against us. How does a country like yours, and your government in particular, how do you maintain a balancing act without antagonizing America, but at the same time forming your strategic partnerships?
The intention is never to antagonize anyone, more so America. I mean, it's an important country, trading nation, and it's a superpower. But we take our position. Malaysia is an independent country, and as I've said, and repeatedly so, it is fiercely independent. And therefore, we will continue to maintain this. Thus far, we are able to navigate it well, but we shall see.
But we are reaching a critical point, as you know how toxic geopolitics is at the moment, right? There's literally a campaign from the US and its allies to suppress China, to contain China, and there's a lot of vilification. Now, you have been quite pragmatic about doing business with China, which makes a lot of sense. And for example, with Huawei, and you're willing to allow them to participate in Malaysia's 5G rollout. But again, Huawei is another company that has been, a Chinese company that has been accused of spying, accused of loading its content with ulterior motives. Now, you and I know in this part of the world that when it comes to Huawei, and it comes to companies like, say, TikTok, for example, the banning of TikTok, a harmless platform where children upload videos of themselves dancing is being banned in the US. So considering all this, it's all about suppressing China tech. We know that. But that is not how it's presented in the rest of the world, especially in the Western-dominated narrative, right? So aren't you at least concerned? I know you have been quite, even to the point of being defiant, that Malaysia, you will do what's best for Malaysia. Are you not concerned about sanctions, about retaliation by America? They have given you hints before, right? If not threats.
We continue to engage, but enough of this hectoring and condescending attitude. So far, the region, particularly ASEAN, seems to be generally smart, navigating based on our own interests. We listen, we are prepared to continue to engage, but we will not be subjected to any unilateral action. And if they have compelling evidence to suggest that any company or any country is causing mischief, then all right, they should adduce evidence. But otherwise, we will not succumb to that sort of a pressure. It is no longer neo-imperialism or colonial rule. We are an independent nation, prepared to accept the stark new realities. What more during the post-normal times? I mean, it's precisely The issue, I'm not going to say is simple, but that seems to be our position. And thus far, we have not encountered serious problems.
Where would you characterize your relations at this juncture regarding China? And what are your plans for future in terms of your partnership with China?
With China, I should say that has been good, but in the last year or so, after I assume the premiership, we have made very clear, and I think the relations have gone to be excellent, I should say, both with President Xi Jinping and with Premier Li Qiang. Continued engagement, discussion, frank, and I value that. And we have agreed to exceed and expand these relations into various fields. That will benefit, of course, both countries, but more so even Malaysia. Digital, energy, additional training, AI, in all fields. And I would say that the relations has been great because China is willing to accommodate and listen, and some of our concerns about training, about getting Malaysians to be involved more so, all these things are being considered. If the issue is raised in past, some countries, including say Africa or even in Malaysia in the past, they say the deal was not rather lopsided. I think the problem is governance. If you consider other interests, then you fall prey to whatever excesses. But we take our position very clearly, and I am, of course, impressed with the fact that the Chinese leadership support this, and they value this sort of friendship, frank exchanges, and we even make sure that our demands in terms of to protect our interests is met.
It's not all such a rosy picture, though, is it? I mean, because of, let's take, for example, China's maneuvers in the South China Sea. Now, of course, China is protecting its territorial integrity, and it's asserting itself regarding its territory. Every country does that. But so does Malaysia. Malaysia has territorial integrity to protect as well. And there can be a little bit of a problem there.
Well, we have problems all, neighbours.
Do you have like a bottom line? Currently, where China is regarding the South China Sea and where your country stands, you have some kind of bottom line that you can't cross this?
Well, let me put it this way. Why this obsession, the tendency to exaggerate the problem, border issues with China, when we in Malaysia, or the Thais, or Brunei, or Indonesia, all have problems with the neighbours. We have not actually cemented agreement in all areas with the borders, but does it mean that it is tension and that it's tense or causing difficulty in relations? No. The relation with Singapore is super excellent, with Thailand, with Indonesia. But all these countries we have problems with the borders. So why then pick and choose and exaggerate the issues with China? Do we have a problem? Yes. Have we encountered any serious clashes or problems? No. Do we think this is going to be easily resolved? No. But what is the mechanism? It's discussions, dialogue. Will we then concede? No. You see? But what I am, should say, not amazed but appalled, is this idea of, yes, we have a problem with China only. And that is, of course, what is, to me, untenable and unacceptable.
Now, I do accept your point about not exaggerating the problem, not making it worse than it is, right? But at the same time, you do realize that in this region, take Taiwan, for example, right? There are circumstances that may be beyond anyone's control where a war could well break out. Taiwan, for example, now this is part of China's territory as far as China is concerned, but you have US warships patrolling the region. You have Taiwan being armed to the teeth. There is only so much of provocation that Beijing can take as far as its territorial integrity is concerned and its strong feelings about Taiwan. These may be well beyond your control or beyond ASEAN's control, and this is mostly with the US in particular, but it's going to drag the whole region into some kind of conflict. You may well, I know you propagate neutrality, but you may well end up having to make a choice. You may well have to end up picking a side. Whose side will you take?
Well, China and Taiwan is not. We're not dealing with two countries.
Of course not.
We
yes.
accept
Beijing and
China
Taiwan.
policy. So it's a different configuration, and therefore our position is it should be seen to be purely a domestic matter that must be resolved, of course, peacefully and amicably between the two entities, because we have recognized, the world generally have recognized one China policy, and therefore we have to caution other partners, including the United States, to be not to be deemed, to be seen to be provocative, because it will affect us invariably. Now, whether we will be neutral in this commission, it depends. If those who have the propensity or deemed to be provocative, then of course we'll have to voice out our concern. But as it stands, I think even this issue is being exaggerated. The problem or the potential of China invading Taiwan or causing problems to the whole region, I've heard it for the last 50 years. I'm not
Not worried?
too unduly worried. I'm more optimistic. I understand, I know the concern and also the responsibility and magnanimity of many of the Chinese leaders. They know how to navigate the situation. For thousands of years they've been there. So we need to caution. That is why in ASEAN we have insisted the issue of not only neutrality. I mean, neutrality is our position so that we can engage, but it doesn't mean that we are not concerned on the issues of what is right, what is wrong. We have made it quite clear that we do not want any third power to be involved in these commissions, because it will only be deemed to be provocative. For example, we have some arrangement, territorial waters with the United States. We have with China, we have with Japan, but we do limit within Malaysia's territorial waters to protect the nation, not to be seen to be on the offensive against any other neighboring country.
Prime Minister, let's move on beyond talk of war and something more constructive. We're our newspapers from Hong Kong. And as you know, again, there is an element of negativity here because Hong Kong is a part of China, and the geopolitics that is going on between the United States and China, Hong Kong is an unwitting casualty of this conflict. And you must have heard all the dominant Western narrative about Hong Kong is not safe anymore. It's not a good place to do business anymore. Do you subscribe to any of that?
Well, I've heard that since the days when Chris Patten was governor of Hong Kong prior to the surrender. But it has not happened. There are ups and downs, but people can navigate. I always trust in the ingenuity of the people there. And if Hong Kong, of course, been that culture, that tradition, they will manage. Of course, there are times the spiraling price hike and the cost will benefit Singapore and Malaysia for a while, fair, but they will manage and they will survive.
One offshoot of this geopolitics between the United States and China, especially with the containment of China, the suppression of China's rise, Hong Kong now has become more relevant than ever as a gateway to China. This is an old slogan, but now more than ever, as a gateway to China, not only that, but also a gateway for China to connect with the rest of the world. We are an international financial center. And we are also a gateway now to the Greater Bay Area, which has tremendous business potential. How is Malaysia going to capitalize on that?
No, we are. In fact, we are benefiting because people look at not only Hong Kong and extension. And I made this reference to even, say, for example, Germany when they say de-risking policy. We benefit not only Hong Kong, but also Malaysia and some countries in ASEAN. We take it like that. I believe the competition is more in terms of complementing. This principle of complementarity is of benefit to us. And even our immediate neighbour Singapore is doing and thriving, fair, but because they are thriving, we benefit. and the economic zone, for example, in Johor would benefit us. So I think we see it in a different light, not in the fierce competition, but competition in a positive sense and complement one each other. I consider the development and the enormous potential of Hong Kong to be that way. I mean, we've been there for the last centuries, and it does not necessarily be deemed to be negative or at the expense of anyone. We should then work and strive to make sure that we are able really to complement.
Let's move on to something which you have talked about a lot, which is the war in Gaza. Now, when we talk about a war in Gaza, I'm not even sure if the word war is the correct term, because we're talking about one side which has an air force, an army, a navy, and we have another side which has mostly just helpless civilians crammed into a narrow stretch of land. 36,000 people dead. So I know you've been very vocal about supporting the Palestinians for many, many years, and now more than ever. Apart from material and moral support, what can you actually do to stop the bloodshed, which is not happening yet? You do have overtures from the US in terms of instructing Israel to back off, to sign a ceasefire, and we have a lot of ceasefire talks. But you know Israel's track record of overturning ceasefire. And Malaysia wants to play an important role in this because of your deep feelings for the Palestinians. But what can you do practically? There's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of talk, but I don't see much in terms of actually achieving something. This war has been going on for a long time. Again, war, I use it quote unquote.
Well, the issue is very complex, as you said. It's not war, it's clearly aggression and colonization, and the atrocities continue. We have done our maximum what generally a smaller country can do. We've been very vocal. We have raised funds to assist particularly civilians, medical and food, and we have continued to engage. I mean, our foreign minister met Minister Wang Yi a number of times to express our support for the Chinese initiative, and I've said it in front of Joe Biden, in front of Olaf Scholz. I mean, there's a maximum what we can do, but the superpower there is United States. President Joe Biden, the last few days have taken a relatively bolder step, but that's short of ensuring that Israel observe this. So it is, to me, that's why I use the term hypocritical. It's totally insane to imagine that the killings can continue of children and women, and this superpower, a major ally of Israel, is unable to do anything. Nobody believes that.
But it's not doing anything. So far, I mean, you're all calling for a ceasefire, you're all calling for an end to the bloodshed, a peace process, but we're a long way off from it, as long as Netanyahu is in charge there.
Well, it's not just Netanyahu, the whole philosophy and policy of the State of Israel. Well, that shows the ultimate failure of the international order and the hypocrisy of the so-called democratic values and human rights of the West. I mean, there are a lot of positive measures, ideas that I should certainly respect and admire. But in terms of practical action, it is, I have said, it's hypocritical. Nobody believes. Do you really mean you believe in human rights? Or based on color, or so that has been a major problem, and it will unfortunately be a dark spot, and will adversely affect the thinking, and particularly of the young. Whom do they trust now?
Is there also a deficit in terms of unity among Muslim countries to present a united front to put a stop to this? Or are they not influential enough, even if you had enough unity?
Yeah. Of course, the Muslim countries are not united as a force, but on this issue, there has been consensus within the Arab League, within the Organization of Islamic Conference, OIC. We have taken a somewhat similar position, immediate cessation of hostilities, return of hostages and political detainees, thousands of them in Israel, and respect a permanent two-state solution. And that's been accepted. And interesting enough, in my engagement with Hamas, that spirit is there. They've expressed. But they say, of course, contingent upon the Israelis accepting the fact that they could not continue with its bombings and killings. How do you then say, we want peace, we'll agree with you, but then you continue to kill people? You can't do that.
You mentioned Hamas. Now, isn't there an element of a significant problem here regarding your relationship with Hamas, in the sense that the way it's, do you consider Hamas to be a completely innocent party here? This latest escalation that's been going on for so long now, it was triggered by the Hamas attack. How do you reconcile both your support for the Palestinians, your balancing act that you play with Western powers that have a lot of influence over Israel, and at the same time your support for an organization that they are determined should always be branded as a terrorist organization?
Well, the colonization of the last 70 years, the escalation and into the West Bank, the killing and dispossession of people's lands has been continuing long before Hamas was formed.
Sure.
So this absurd, nonsensical argument to suggest that it is Hamas. Hamas was just recently formed. Long before Hamas, this has been going on. You see? And why do you erase that part of history? Pre-7th October and post-7th October. And that would be my contention. Do I then believe that any group should or condone any killing of children? No, I don't. But remember, as I've said this in many places, the last was in Tokyo, last few weeks, I said, so Mandela was a terrorist until the world took a position that, look, he was a freedom fighter and considered a great hero and darling. Remember, just 20 years or 30 years before, look what the UK media and the UK government and the states consider him.
Sure, one man's terrorist can be another man's hero, but when you compare it with what happened with Mandela, so are you saying that Hamas also could one day be hailed as heroes globally and celebrated as...
No, I hope so, because they are actually freedom fighters. They want to free their land. Yeah. IRA is part of the government now. I recall when I was young, the IRA is just terrorists, period. Not one single positive thing that they have done. They were just corrupt and terrorists. That's it. And that's what I've been told. So don't be deluded by this constant, incessant propaganda from the Western media.
You have good relations with Hamas, and I think you have some insight into their thinking as to how this conflict is going to end, the current conflict and the hostages they hold. What do you think will happen?
No, I continue to engage with Hamas for the last many, many years, and I continue. And of course, I express my sympathy to Ismail Hania when his children and grandchildren were killed on this auspicious Muslim celebrations day. And I am, of course, I discussed it very frankly. I wanted to know his position, what's happening. At the same time, I said, look, I represent a view that would want amicable resolution, immediate peace, and the return of hostages, of course, in exchange for peace, and the return of thousands of political prisoners in Israel. And I'm pleased that the political wing of Hamas, at least, that I'm engaging with, not with the other wing. I have no contact with them. Is happy to accept the Arab League recommendations or the OIC, which to me is fair. And now with the latest initiative by President Joe Biden with Qatar and Egypt, I mean, they seem to be ready. But of course the condition is stop the bombing. But Israel has refused.
Yes.
You see, why can't you now focus on Israel, Netanyahu and Israel? The problem is no longer with Hamas now.
Do you see a Palestinian-Israel two-state solution eventually? At some stage, the Palestinians will have their own country, or at the rate we're going, will the Palestinians be wiped out before we can come up to that situation ever?
Israeli bombardment of Gaza, the intention is clear. And I believe in the wisdom of people, and finally truth prevail and justice will be given rightly and please.
Prime Minister, we're running out of time, but I do want to say something. You have taken 25 years to reach where you are now. So in terms of tenacity and persistence, I think nobody can take that away from you. You're some kind of a comeback king, so to speak. So what kind of legacy do you expect to leave behind? I know this, your deep feelings about Palestine and to see a peaceful solution is one of them. Do you expect to see that within your premiership?
You see, there's one episode, but what is interesting, it stems from my belief that as human beings, there must be humanity, there must be human values, there must be compassion and justice. Malaysia is a multiracial country. Of course, the majority are Malay Muslims. But I am determined to prove that Malaysia can be a country that is just for the minorities, the marginalized, must be taken care of. There's one thing, one legacy I want to remember behind, is that there's one man, crazy as he was, in and out of prison, but he tried his best to save his country through good governance, rid the country of corruption, and show proof that you can champion the cause by upholding the principle of justice and compassion.
On that very optimistic note, Prime Minister, I do hope you will achieve what you aim to. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us as well, especially our audience in this part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, tough questions.
Tough?